I'm going to introduce another module, which is a building block of modular synthesis, and it is an analog trigger sequencer, so it sequences voltages as well as sequencing triggers. Basically, there are 8 steps, though the way this is set up, it's a little bit more complicated, and I'm getting 16 steps out of it. And you have a knob for each voltage. Right now I've got the sequencer stopped, it's not running. It needs a clock input, which is just a square wave, and we're going to do something really cool with that later, actually. It's parked on step 1 of the sequence, and there are 2 possible voltages that can come out. The way this is set up, steps 1 through 8 will output the 8 voltages set on these 8 knobs, and steps 9 through 16 will be the voltages on these 8 knobs. And I can't tell by looking very easily on this part of the sequencer whether I'm using steps 1 through 8 or 9 through 16. What I have to do is to follow through the sequencer controller, look at my switch, and I'm looking at row number 2 now instead of row number 1. So if I turn up the oscillator and move this knob, I should be able to change the pitch of that oscillator. So the idea would be that you would set these knobs to pitches that you like for a certain oscillator, and I'm just going to randomly set them all over the place. Then I'm going to hit start on a clock generator, which is really, it's just a square wave oscillator, but it's set up like a clock because it tells me how many beats per minute it's going to be running at. And then you can do things like clock division, so instead of having one clock pulse every quarter note, you can have one every 8th note, every 16th note, so you can have multiple different clocks all running. It's a complicated module, it's very flexible, and when you really get into sequencing, you're going to want that because you can have certain things running at half the speed of other things, that type of thing. We're just going to use one main clock output running at a particular speed, and what you'll see as I turn this up, you'll be able to figure out which row of knobs we're on because you'll be able to hear how the pitch is changing. That might be reminiscent of all those movies you guys watched in the 60s, computer-generated music. Now, as you speed this up, you can get a pretty cool effect of rotating notes. So you get up to 300 BPM, and something that when it's running slow just sounds drunk and boring can all of a sudden be kind of cool.